Max was once a proud German shepherd, a dog whose loyalty and love knew no bounds. From the day he was born, he exuded an energy and spirit that captivated anyone who crossed his path. His coat was a rich blend of deep blacks and tans, his eyes sharp and full of intelligence, and his bark echoed through the streets with the sound of a confident and strong animal. When Max was just a puppy, Lisa and Tom, a young couple who lived in the heart of a small suburban neighborhood, had adopted him from a rescue shelter. They had always dreamed of having a German shepherd, and Max was their first dog together. From the very first day, the couple poured love and care into Max. Lisa would spend hours playing fetch in the backyard, while Tom took him on long walks every evening, teaching him commands, rewarding him with treats, and making sure Max felt like the center of their world. But as time went on, things started to change. The couple's work schedules became more demanding, and their once happy home began to show signs of strain. Lisa was promoted at her job and was now working late into the night, while Tom started a new business, causing him to stay away from home more often. They were both struggling to balance their personal lives, and somewhere along the way, they began to forget the promise they had made to Max to always be there for him. It was subtle at first. The backyard, once a place for play, became a place where Max was left alone for longer periods. The walks that once happened daily turned into sporadic outings, and Max began spending more time outside, tied to a post in the yard, while his owners were consumed by their busy lives. Slowly, the joyful barking that used to fill the house became quieter, replaced with a sad, almost desperate whine from Max as he waited for his family to come home. The change in Max was noticeable. His once vibrant coat began to dull, his ribs started to show through his fur, and he became thinner and weaker with each passing day. His eyes, once bright and eager, grew hollow and empty. Max, who had once been the heart of the household, now seemed like a forgotten relic, an afterthought in his owners' lives. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The cold winters came, and Max's chain became covered in layers of snow. His water bowl was often frozen, his food was irregular, and the bond he had once shared with Lisa and Tom felt like a distant memory. The couple was unaware of how much pain Max was enduring, too caught up in their own struggles to notice the silent suffering of the animal who had once given them nothing but love. It was during one of the coldest winters on record that Sarah, a seasoned animal rescuer, found herself driving through the quiet, snow-covered roads of a rural town. Sarah had dedicated her life to rescuing animals from abusive and neglectful situations, and after years of working in shelters and foster homes, she had developed an instinct for when an animal needed help. It was more than just a job to her, it was her calling. That particular day, Sarah had already completed a rescue mission in the nearby city and was heading home when something told her to take a detour. It was a feeling she couldn't explain, but over the years she had learned to trust it. The feeling grew stronger as she passed by the outskirts of town. She felt a tug in her chest, a sense of urgency that she couldn't ignore. As Sarah drove down a back road, she came across an old, dilapidated house, its windows boarded up, the yard overrun with weeds and tangled vines. The house had the unmistakable look of abandonment, and yet something about it felt different. There was no sound, no birds chirping, no wind rustling through the trees. Just a quiet stillness that made her uneasy. Her heart raced as she parked her van, her boots crunching against the snow as she stepped out. She had rescued many animals from situations like this before, but this house had an aura of neglect that unsettled her. As she approached the backyard, she heard it, a faint bark, muffled by the distance but unmistakably desperate. It wasn't long before Sarah's eyes fell upon him. There in the far corner of the yard was Max. His body was frail, his fur matted with dirt and snow, and his eyes, those eyes held a profound sadness. Sarah could feel the weight of his suffering, even from where she stood. He had been left to endure the worst of the winter's cold, chained to a post, forgotten and alone. Without a second thought, Sarah rushed to his side. Her heart ached as she knelt beside him, softly calling his name. Max blinked slowly, his eyes barely registering her presence, but there was no movement from him. His body was too weak, his muscles too stiff from the cold. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached out to touch him. The coldness of his body was chilling, but it was the rawness of his neck that caught her attention. The chain, once meant to protect him, had now become a source of pain and suffering. It had been there for so long that it had dug into his skin, causing deep, infected wounds that were now visibly swollen. "Max," she whispered softly, her voice filled with compassion. "I'm here to help you, boy. You're not alone anymore." It took every ounce of Sarah's strength to gently untangle the thick chain that had held Max prisoner for so long. The links were rusted, and it was clear they hadn't been moved in months. She worked carefully, freeing him from the prison that had confined him for far too long. The relief was immediate, but it was just the beginning. Max could barely stand, his legs trembling beneath him. The journey to the clinic was excruciatingly slow. Sarah could feel Max's weight against her as she supported him in her arms, each step feeling like a monumental effort. But she refused to give up on him. She knew she had to get him to safety, to give him a chance to heal. Once they arrived at the clinic, the staff immediately went to work. The vet confirmed Sarah's fears. Max was severely malnourished and dehydrated. His injuries from the chain were worse than they had first appeared, and the infections had already spread to his skin. But despite all the odds, there was hope. For the next several days, Sarah stayed with Max. She talked to him softly, offering comfort as the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize him. Max's body was weak, but his spirit was strong. And with each passing hour, Sarah could see the faintest signs of recovery. He began to drink water, eat small meals, and the light in his eyes, though dim, began to return. The process was slow, but Max's transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Sarah worked tirelessly, giving him baths, offering him love, and even bringing him his favorite treats to entice him to eat. Slowly he began to trust her, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. One day, after weeks of recovery, Max managed to take his first steps on his own. It was a small victory, but it felt like a triumph. His tail, once limp and lifeless, began to wag again, albeit weakly. It was a sign that he was starting to regain the joy that had once defined him. Over the next few months, Max's health continued to improve. He grew stronger, more energetic, and began to enjoy the things he had once loved, running through the yard, chasing after toys, and basking in the sun. Sarah's heart swelled with pride as she watched him regain his confidence and happiness. But as much as Sarah had come to love Max, she knew he deserved a family who could give him everything she couldn't. Someone who could offer him the stability, love, and care he had been deprived of for so long. It took some time, but eventually Sarah found the perfect family for Max. A couple with 2 young children who had always dreamed of adopting a dog. When they met Max, it was love at first sight. Max immediately bonded with the children, his once cautious demeanor replaced with the playful spirit that had once made him so full of life. Sarah knew she had found his forever home. Max's new life was everything he had ever deserved. He ran through the fields, played with the children, and spent his evenings curled up on the couch, safe and loved. Max was no longer chained and forgotten. He was home. For Sarah, the memory of Max's rescue would stay with her forever. He had come into her life as a broken soul, but he had left her heart full of love and gratitude. Max's story wasn't just about the pain he had endured. It was a story of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of love.